In the morning, the weather radar was calling for heavy thunderstorms. We pulled the bikes under the awning and went to get breakfast. The Elkhorn had a breakfast special that we both went for, called the Clam Laker. Weeks later, I still remember that tasty Clam Laker. After breakfast, we prepped the bikes for the day and waited for the majority of the storm to pass, and then it was back on the road. The rain wasn't too bad, and we were eager to get up to Point Detour in the northernmost part of Wisconsin. Since the rain had come down hard, we decided we were going to skip the trails and make for the adventure on the road. At breakfast, another group of bikers had come in to wait out the storm. They were riding the Trans-Wisconsin Adventure Trail as well, and were looking to make cornucopia that day. They had come up from Iowa and had skipped a bit of the rough trail in favor of making use of their limited time by sticking to the tarmac. Around noon, we rolled into Ashland, Wisconsin. Matt knew some of the history of Ashland and filled me in on some of the interesting parts of the logging in the area, as well as some of the history regarding the Ashland Hotel.
And they just dump them into the Ashland Bay, and then they, make barges of them or whatever and pull them to sawmills. But some of the logs sank to the bottom, and so there is a company in Ashland that dives down there and retrieves those old growth logs and then sells them for a shitload of money for people who make furniture and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So that is so cool.
Yeah, and the water is it has so little oxygen in it that there's very little bacterial action and stuff. Actually, diving on wooden ships in the Lake Superior is pretty awesome because they don't go away like they do in the ocean.
That is really cool.
Maybe it's because I grew up in the seaside town of Valdez, Alaska, but I really liked Ashland and the rest of the port towns that we visited as well. The water level was way up, and the areas that used to be walking trails were now underwater. We followed State Route 13 up the coast of northeast Wisconsin to Bayfield. I needed to stop by Maggie's restaurant for a ride to eat stop. I grabbed a cup of coffee, and we went down to the harbor where people were unloading their boats for a sailboat race. We took a minute to chat with the skipper about his J-boat, and then settled back up as we continued our ride. It was pretty cool seeing the changes in the landscape and the trees as we got further north. Anyone who's been to the UP, Michigan, or north of that would recognize how the tree branches get shorter and shorter since the longer branches break off from the snow load. The actual road to Point Detour was all sand, which had benefited from the rain. We saw another rider leaving Point Detour while we were on our way in. That was the only other Trans-Wisconsin Trail rider we'd seen, with the exception of the people at breakfast. At Point Detour, the walkway to the water had been washed out, so we ended up climbing down to the water's edge. It was a cloudy day with limited visibility, but it was still an awesome view. With Point Detour conquered, we headed to Cornucopia.
What do you think would happen if the people at work found out about your channel?
Yep. I don't know. I just...
Again, my brother was chock full of information about the area. Most of it was probably incorrect, but I couldn't prove he was lying.
Okay, bust out some cornucopia facts.
Cornucopia, it is on the west side of Wisconsin's kind of peninsula that sticks into Lake Superior. Used to be a big fishing port. Obviously, with the decline in the whitefish population, and heck, for all I know, maybe the decline in demand for whitefish, it is not much of a port anymore. It's still kind of a touristy destination. If I remember right, they still do marathons and that kind of stuff here every once in a while. Big bicycle area. People bicycle around the peninsula up here a lot.
Nice.
And mostly it shuts down in the winter.
Okay. Well, thanks.
Yeah, that was kind of an off.
We continued on, deciding that a visit to Duluth and Superior was in order. I've never been to either, and my brother really enjoyed them the last time he was there. On our way, we took our time stopping off at small towns with interesting attractions. We made it to Superior, Wisconsin around 4 p.m. We decided to do a little sightseeing, get some food, and get a hotel for the night. We decided to swing by a Great Lakes freighter, the Meteor. The SS Meteor is the last remaining whaleback freighter designed by Captain Alexander McDougall, and it was built in Superior, Wisconsin. These ships were hung with the descriptor whaleback because of their cigar-shaped steel hulls that rode low in the water when loaded with cargo, presumably to aid in stability. There were 44 of the whalebacks built, and the Meteor is number 36. There was a tour getting ready to start, so we paid for tickets and took the tour. Luckily, the tour group was small and we were able to ask a lot of questions, which the high school-age tour guide did his best to answer. We left the hotel early on the third day. We were going to ride the slab all the way home, but wanted to get in some sightseeing before we left. We headed down to the canal park in the early morning before the tourists woke up and flocked to the area. We walked to the lighthouse and checked out the aerial lift bridge, then spent a couple hours wandering around in the Lake Superior Maritime Visitor Center. It was a free museum run by the Army Corps of Engineers, and it would have been worth a hefty entrance fee. There were tons of interesting exhibits about Duluth, the Great Lakes, and Great Lakes shipping. Even hurrying though, 2 hours really wasn't enough time to see everything, but we had to get back on the road. Leaving Superior, my head started to itch. My helmet just felt strange. Focusing on it, I was pretty sure I had a bug in my helmet.
I feel like there's a bug or something in my helmet.
Okay. We can pull over and you can debug yourself if you'd like.
Well, let's not kill it. I mean, kill the bug, not the bike.
Right.
We'll see if it still feels like it's creeping around. We'll stop up here and get at a gas station or something. Yeah, there's something crawling in my head.
It wasn't biting or anything, but it felt damn creepy having something crawl around on my head. We whipped into a gas station and I found a moth. Apparently he didn't like life in Minnesota and was trying to relocate to Wisconsin. The rest of the ride home we kept an eye on the weather radar. Several cells of thunderstorms were working their way across the state, and we were lucky enough to avoid most of them. We did get caught in a shower and had to stop on an off-ramp to put on our rain gear. We stuck to Route 53 with the exception of a detour to Dallas, Wisconsin, where I collected points for the States of Confusion rally. The semis on the highway didn't play nice with the KLR. Every time Matt would pass a semi, his whole bike would shake. To me, riding behind him, it looked like a tank slapper death wobble, but Matt just said it was KLR life, and it had been that way on both of his trips to Alaska. It made me really appreciate the V-Strom for its on-road capability. A few stops for gas and a rest at the A&W root beer stand, and we were back home. The last day of the ride would have been much longer and much more tedious had it not been for the Packdog Bolds. Without worrying about sand and side-by-sides, we were able to do a lot more chatting. The trip was over too quickly, but Matt had to get back to exploring the pharmacological and pathophysiological implications of Neisseria meningitis infections, and I had to get back to Ohio. It was a great time pushing my meager motorcycle skills and seeing some great country, all with my friend and brother. The Trans-Wisconsin Adventure Trail goes back on my to-ride list, as I haven't done it from start to finish, and I had such a good time. I want to go again. Next year may be the whole trail, or maybe a circle tour of Lake Superior. Regardless, they're warm-ups for our 2021 trip to Barrow, Alaska.